The phone rang just as I was rinsing the last of the stew from my plate. Maggie's beef stew recipe, though mine never tasted quite the same without her touch. I glanced at the caller ID and smiled despite the ache in my chest. "Olivia," I said, answering. "Dad, how are you holding up?" Her voice still carried that familiar warmth, the kind that always pulled at the quiet spaces in my heart. I settled into Maggie's old armchair, the one with the worn fabric on the arms from years of her sitting there with a book in the evenings. "Oh, you know me, Liv. Just finished dinner and was about to put on the evening news." I didn't mention that it was the third day in a row of leftovers, or that I'd spent most of the afternoon staring at the photo of Maggie smiling in the garden. "Are you eating enough? You remember how to use that grocery delivery app one showed you?" "I'm eating just fine," I interrupted gently. "Though, I did have a little scare yesterday. Left the oven on after baking some bread. Caught it before anything happened." There was a pause. I could picture her frowning, that same little crease between her eyebrows Maggie used to have. "Dad, maybe we should talk about getting someone to come by more often, just to check in." "I'm fine, Liv. Really. How's Seattle? The tech conference going well?" "Yeah, we're wrapping up tomorrow. Noah's been handling most of the meetings while I sit through these endless presentations about market trends." She laughed, but it felt forced. "Anyway, I should go. Noah and I are meeting some potential clients for dinner." "Of course, sweetheart. Love you." "Love you too, Dad. Take care." "Okay?" I heard the click of her hanging up, or so I thought. There was a faint rustle, the sound of her phone against fabric. And then voices. "Noah, you see how he's slipping?" Olivia's voice, stripped of the softness from moments before. "He left the oven on. What if he burns the place down?" A heavy weight dropped into my stomach. "It's time we start looking at care facilities," Noah replied. His tone was cool, calculated. "He's a good man, but he can't live alone forever. And the house? It's worth close to $900,000 now. Maybe more in this market." Olivia's tone shifted to something I'd never heard from her before. Pure calculation. "That would cover the down payment for that place in Bellevue. The one with the lake view." "Exactly," Noah said. "Put him somewhere comfortable, not too pricey, and we get our new house. Win-win." She laughed. My daughter actually laughed. "God, you should have seen him tonight. So happy just to hear from me. He has no idea. The longer we wait, the more forgetful he'll get. We should act while he still trusts us completely." The phone slid from my numb fingers, landing on the hardwood floors Maggie and I had installed together one summer. Every plank nailed by my own hands. The house felt different suddenly, like the walls themselves had heard her betrayal. I stared at Maggie's photo on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to hold something I couldn't name. Disappointment, maybe, or a warning. The grandfather clock ticked on in the corner, steady and merciless. Outside, the early spring wind stirred the chimes on the porch. Something inside me shifted, cold, solid, immovable. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was confused, helpless, ready to be packed away so they could start their new life. But I wasn't gone yet, and I wasn't nearly as broken as they thought. I don't know how long I sat there in the dim light, Maggie's face watching me from the silver frame on the mantel. The stew pot was still on the stove, the spoon half submerged, cooling. When I finally stood, my legs felt heavier than they had in years. I walked through the living room we'd built together, the place where every chair, every picture frame, every paint stroke had a memory baked into it. The couch where Olivia used to curl up with her homework after school. The coffee table I'd made from reclaimed oak, sanding it smooth while she played on the floor beside me. I opened the old filing cabinet in my office, the one Maggie had insisted I keep organized. "You never know when you might need to prove what you've done," she used to say. The folders were all there, decades of receipts, bank statements, and contracts. I pulled the first one without thinking. University of Washington tuition. $184,000 over 4 years. I could still remember those winter nights taking side jobs after my construction shift. Coming home covered in dust, hands raw from the cold. Maggie would have coffee waiting and rub the knots from my shoulders while I went over the bills. "Roy, you're working yourself to death," she'd say. "She deserves the best we can give her," I'd answer. "She's smart enough for any future she wants." Maggie would kiss my head. "Just don't give her so much she forgets to be thankful." I should have listened. The wedding receipts were there too. $42,000 for one day. I told Olivia we could manage maybe 20 if we were careful, but she'd cried about wanting her dream wedding by the Sound. So I'd taken weekend jobs for months, installing decks, repairing roofs, whatever paid fast. "Dad, you're the best father in the world," she'd whispered during our dance. "I'll never forget this." But she had. The folder from 3 years ago was the worst. When Noah lost his job at the investment firm for reasons I was never told. They'd moved in temporarily. I didn't charge rent. I covered the groceries, the electric bills, even paid for a rental car when their SUV was in the shop. Noah used to slap me on the back and say, "You're a saint, Roy." Olivia would hug me and promise they'd pay me back when they got on their feet. They were making more than I ever had within a year. And yet they stayed. There were smaller things too. The anniversary dinner at a downtown steakhouse, $450 for their special night. The emergency dental work for Noah, $1,200. A new water heater for their townhouse, $1,800. All those numbers, all those moments, stacked into something heavier than any beam I'd ever lifted on a job site. I closed the last folder and looked around my office. This wasn't just a home, it was a monument to sacrifice. Mine and Maggie's. And now, my daughter wanted to sell it out from under me and tuck me away somewhere not too expensive. I turned to the bottom drawer and pulled out a card I hadn't touched in years. Daniel McCarthy, real estate attorney. Maggie had insisted we see him after her diagnosis, just to have everything in order. I turned it over in my fingers. Maybe it was time for another visit. The next morning, I walked through my house like a stranger inspecting a property. Not for its warmth or its memories, but for its market value. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the granite countertop I'd installed myself over 3 long nights after my day shifts. Maggie had picked out the pattern, speckled gray with flecks of gold that caught the morning sun. She used to make coffee here every morning until the illness made her too weak to stand for long. I could still see Olivia's first steps in this room. Maggie had cried, clutching our little girl as if she could keep her small forever. The living room still held Christmas mornings, birthdays, and late-night talks. The oak flooring under my feet had been laid by my hands alone, every plank cut to fit perfectly. Upstairs, Olivia's old room was frozen in time. Soft yellow walls, a few high school photos still tacked to the bulletin board, the white desk I'd built under the window. And the master bedroom. Maggie's side of the bed was untouched. Her reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. The scent of her lavender lotion lingered faintly in the closet. I thought of her voice near the end. "Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you. Promise me you'll look after yourself." I'd failed that promise long enough. By mid-morning, I was pulling into a small brick building on Pine Street, the office of Daniel McCarthy. It wasn't one of those glass and steel towers downtown. This was the kind of place that dealt with real people, not corporate mergers. Daniel greeted me in a dark blue suit, hair just starting to silver. He shook my hand firmly and poured coffee into a mug that said "World's Okayest Lawyer." "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry for your loss," he said, settling behind his desk. "What can I do for you today?" I told him everything. The call I'd overheard, their talk of a nursing home, the house sale they'd already planned, the Bellevue dream home they wanted to buy with the money. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just nodded occasionally, his pen scratching across a legal pad. "Legally speaking," he said when I finished, "your daughter and son-in-law have no claim to your property. It's in your name alone since your wife's passing, correct?" "That's right." "Then they can't sell it, can't move you out, can't touch any of your assets without your consent." A strange lightness spread in my chest, relief mixed with something harder. "And if I wanted to sell it myself?" I asked. "You could list it tomorrow. The market in your neighborhood is strong. If you wanted to move fast, I could connect you with buyers who pay cash, closing in as little as a week." "A week?" I let the word hang in the air. Daniel studied my face. "Mr. Hayes, if you're serious, we can prepare everything in 48 hours. I thought of Olivia's laughter on that call, of Noah's cool tone when he said strike while he still trusts us. I set my coffee down. Let's do it. By the time I left Daniel's office, the decision was locked in place. I stepped into the crisp Seattle air feeling lighter than I had in months. The thought of Olivia and Noah returning from their trip to find the rug pulled from under them. It wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming what was mine. Halfway back to the truck, my phone buzzed. Olivia's name lit the screen. For a moment, I considered answering. But then I pictured her in some hotel lobby, probably sipping a $14 cocktail while plotting my future care. I let it ring out. At home, I set Daniel's card on my desk beside Maggie's photo. "I'll keep my promise this time," I murmured. Her smile in the picture seemed a little sharper, like she knew something was coming. I opened my laptop and typed in, "Seattle real estate agents, quick sale specialists." I didn't want a slow, drawn-out process. I wanted this done before Olivia even unpacked her suitcase. Scrolling through profiles, one name kept popping up, Eric Lawson, 48 years old, over 20 years in the business, specialized in as-is properties for cash buyers. His testimonials were exactly what I needed to hear. Sold our home in 5 days, cash offer. No hassle, no stress. I called his direct number. "This is Eric. Mr. Lawson, my name's Roy Hayes. I'm looking to sell my house quickly. How soon could you come take a look?" "What area?" "Green Lake." I could hear his interest sharpen. "That's a hot neighborhood. If it's well kept, I have 3 investors who'd buy sight unseen. I could be there this afternoon, say 3 o'clock? 3 works, I said, glancing at the clock. It was just afternoon. The next 3 hours were a blur. Years as a builder had taught me how to prepare a space for inspection. I dusted Maggie's bay window, polished the hardwood, tightened the screws on the kitchen cabinet handles. I straightened the framed family photos, even though I knew soon they'd be packed away. This wasn't cleaning for guests. This was staging for an execution. At exactly 3, the doorbell rang. My hand hovered on the brass knob I'd installed myself in '92. The one Maggie had insisted on because it felt solid. I opened the door to a tall man with a leather briefcase and a practiced smile. He stepped inside, and his eyes immediately scanned the crown molding, the smooth oak floors, the light pouring through the bay window. "You weren't kidding," he said, almost to himself. "This is exactly what my buyers are after." As he walked from room to room, tapping notes into his tablet, I realized something. He was appraising the house, but I was appraising him. If I was going to hand over the keys to everything Maggie and I built, it had to be to someone who could finish the job fast and clean. When he turned back to me in the kitchen, his expression was decisive. "Mr. Hayes, if you're ready, I can have you a full cash offer by tomorrow morning." I didn't even have to think. Do it. The next morning, Eric called at 9:15 sharp. "Roy, I've got an offer for you. All cash. No inspections. They'll cover closing costs if you can sign today." "How much?" He named a figure that made my pulse tick faster. Higher than even Daniel's optimistic estimate. Maggie would have called it life-changing money. "I'll need you to bring your ID to my office. We can have everything signed in under an hour." I stared at the phone for a moment after hanging up. There it was, freedom, sitting just on the other side of a pen stroke. By 10:30, I was in Eric's sleek office downtown. He slid the contract across the table. It felt strange, the weight of the paper, knowing this single signature would undo nearly 4 decades of labor, memories, and sacrifice. But I thought about Olivia's laugh on that overheard call. Noah's voice saying strike while he still trusts us. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. When the last page was signed, Eric smiled like a man delivering good news. "We'll have funds wired into your account within 48 hours. The buyers want possession by Friday." Friday. The same day Olivia and Noah were coming home. Perfect. Driving back to Green Lake, I noticed details I'd ignored for years. The moss along the stone wall I'd built one summer when money was tight. The front porch where Maggie and I had spent endless evenings watching the light fade over the water. The tree out front where Olivia had once hung a tire swing. It would all be someone else's soon. And that was fine, better than fine. It was mine to give and mine to take away. That afternoon I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. The photo albums Maggie had put together, her jewelry box, the old carpenter's level my father had given me. Everything else? Let the buyers deal with it. By evening, Daniel called to confirm the wire instructions. Roy, I've handled a lot of sales. I've never seen someone move this decisively. It's easier, I said, when you've been preparing without realizing it. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The house was quieter somehow, as if it understood what was coming. Friday was only 3 days away. Friday afternoon, the wire hit my account. Nearly $1 million, clean, untouchable, and entirely mine. By the time the sun dipped low over Green Lake, the moving van was gone. The rooms emptied except for the note I'd left on the doorstep. I parked my truck 2 streets over and waited. At 7:10 p.m., Olivia's Lexus pulled into the driveway. Noah stepped out first, phone in hand, that same smooth confidence in his stride. Olivia followed, suitcase wheels clicking against the concrete. I watched from the shadows as she slid her key into the lock and stopped. She tried again, twisting harder this time. Then she looked at Noah. It's not turning, she said, her voice already tightening. Let me try. He yanked the handle, rattled the knob. The deadbolt held. Then Olivia spotted the envelope on the welcome mat. She bent down, tore it open, and began reading. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew them by heart. Olivia, Noah, this home is no longer yours to enter. I've sold it. Your belongings are gone. You'll find them in storage under your name at Westside Depot. The rent is paid for 6 months. That's more than enough time to find a place of your own. Consider this my response to your plans for me. I am not a burden. I am not confused. I am simply done being used. Roy. Her face went white, then flushed red. She turned the letter toward Noah, jabbing at the words with her finger. I could see her mouth forming the syllables of "he can't do this." Noah snatched the paper, scanning it quickly before his jaw set like stone. He looked around, as if expecting me to appear from thin air. When he didn't see me, he kicked the bottom step of the porch hard enough to make the railing shake. Olivia pulled out her phone and started dialing. I knew exactly who she was calling. I let it buzz twice in my pocket before silencing it. Not sending it to voicemail, just letting it ring. From my vantage point, I saw her lower the phone slowly. She turned in a slow circle, eyes scanning the street like she could feel me watching. Then she shouted into the night, "Dad, we need to talk." I smiled in the dark and stayed right where I was. They found me the next morning. I was sitting on the porch of my rental cabin 20 minutes outside the city, drinking coffee and watching the fog drift over the lake. A black SUV pulled up hard on the gravel. Noah climbed out first, his face already set in a scowl. Olivia followed, looking less furious than unsettled. "You think this is funny?" Noah barked, marching up the steps. "Selling the house without even talking to us?" I didn't move. "It was never your house, Noah." Olivia stepped forward, her voice sharper than I'd heard since she was a teenager. "Dad, how could you do this? We come home from a business trip, and you've locked us out of our own home." "My home," I corrected. "And I didn't lock you out. I sold it." Her mouth opened, then closed again. "Why?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because I overheard you planning to put me in a care facility and sell it yourselves. You called me a burden. You said I was slipping, and you were already spending the money." Color drained from her face. Noah glanced at her, but said nothing. "Dad, we were just talking," Olivia tried. "You've had a few close calls lately. We were worried about you living alone." "No," I said quietly. "You were worried about the value of the property, about lake views and square footage in Bellevue. Don't pretend otherwise." I heard every word. Noah stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was delivering a warning. "You don't understand how this makes you look. People are going to think you're unstable. Selling your house out from under your family." I laughed once, sharp. You aren't my family. Maggie was my family. Olivia was my family once. But that ended the day she started measuring my life in resale value. Olivia's hands shook. We have nowhere to go. You have jobs. You make good money. You'll figure it out. And if you can't? I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. Noah's jaw clenched. You'll regret this. I stood, stepping closer until we were eye to eye. Maybe, but at least it'll be my regret, not yours. They didn't have anything left to say. Noah turned first, stalking back to the SUV. Olivia lingered for a moment, like she wanted to say something softer, but in the end she just followed him. I watched their taillights disappear down the dirt road before I sat back down, poured myself another cup of coffee, and let the quiet settle in again. By Monday morning, the phone started ringing again. Old friends, neighbors, even a few people I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them had heard something about me. The story varied depending on who told it. In some versions, I'd snapped and sold the house in a fit of paranoia. In others, I was being taken advantage of by shady buyers and would be homeless within weeks. It didn't take much to guess where the rumors came from. Olivia and Noah were working their social network like pros, painting themselves as the dutiful children blindsided by their unstable father. One of my oldest friends, Gary, called that afternoon. Roy, tell me it's not true. They're saying you sold the house without telling them and now you've got nowhere to live. I'm sitting on my porch looking at the lake. Gary? I said, sipping my coffee. I've got more money in my account than I've ever had. I'm fine. He hesitated. Then why would they? Because they wanted it, and I didn't give it to them. There was a long silence, and then Gary's voice turned grim. I believe you, but they're making the rounds, and you know how people love a scandal. It didn't bother me the way I thought it might. I'd spent years caring what people thought. Neighbors, Olivia's friends, Maggie's extended family. But sitting there in my chair with no mortgage, no debt, and no obligations, I realized none of that mattered now. The next day, Daniel called. Just so you're aware, Olivia contacted my office. She wanted to know if there was any way to reverse the sale. I chuckled. And I explained the law to her in very plain terms. She wasn't happy. I could almost picture it. Her sitting there with that tight smile she used when she didn't get her way. Noah leaning back with his arms crossed like he could intimidate someone into rewriting reality. The truth was, I had no interest in fighting their smear campaign. Let them talk. Let them play the victims. The people who mattered, the ones who actually knew me, would see through it. What they didn't realize was that every whisper, every story they told, was only making it harder for them to find a couch to crash on. Seattle's social circles could be small when you burned the wrong bridges. By the end of the week, I heard from another friend that Olivia and Noah were staying in a short-term rental and paying top dollar for it. Good. That money would go fast. And when it did, they'd learn what it felt like to be on the other side of taking without giving. It was late Thursday evening when the call came. I almost didn't answer, but the number was unfamiliar and I was curious. Dad. Her voice was softer than I'd heard it in years. Olivia. There was a pause. Just the faint hum of the line between us. Can we talk? In person? I think we've said enough, don't you? Please, she said quickly. I need to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near the waterfront. She was already there when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. You look tired, I said, sitting down. She gave a brittle laugh. Noah and I have been stressed. The rental's expensive. We've been trying to find something permanent, but the market's insane. I waited. She glanced down at her mug. Look, Dad, I'm sorry. About the things I said. About the way we handled all of this. That's a lot of words without any ownership, Olivia. Her eyes flicked up, and for a moment I thought I saw the little girl who used to run into my arms after school. But it was gone just as fast. I'm asking if we can maybe work something out, she said. We could buy the house from the new owners. You could help with the down payment. It would be like it never happened. I stared at her for a long moment. You want me to give you money to buy back a house I built? That you plan to sell out from under me? Her voice sharpened. It wouldn't be giving. We'd pay you back. I shook my head slowly. Olivia, I'm done funding your life. Maggie and I gave you more than most parents could. We did it because we loved you, not because we expected anything in return. But you've turned that into expectation, not gratitude. She looked like she might cry, but no tears came. So, that's it? You're cutting me off? I'm giving you a chance to stand on your own, I said. It's long overdue. For a second, I thought she might throw the coffee in my face. Instead, she pushed her chair back, stood, and walked out without another word. I watched her go, the bell above the cafe door jingling in her wake, and felt no urge to follow. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Olivia again. This time it wasn't a phone call. It was a letter, slid under the door of my cabin. The handwriting was familiar, Maggie's looping cursive, inherited by our daughter. Dad, I've been thinking about everything you said. I'm angry, but I understand. You and Mom worked for everything you had. I didn't appreciate it, and I took advantage of it. I don't know if we can fix this, but I want to try. No demands. No requests for money. Just a single page folded neatly. I sat with it for a while, the paper soft between my fingers. I thought of Maggie's warning near the end of her life. Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. I'd failed that test once. I wasn't about to do it again. That afternoon, I went into town and met with Daniel. Together, we drew up a document, a simple trust holding the proceeds from the sale. Olivia would inherit the remainder only if she met one condition: 5 consecutive years of complete financial independence. No handouts, no loans, no bailouts. When the papers were signed, I sent her a short note of my own. Olivia, if you want to repair what's between us, start by standing on your own. When you've done that for 5 years, there will be something waiting for you. Until then, my life is mine to live on my terms. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But a week later, I heard from Gary that Olivia and Noah had moved into a modest apartment in Ballard. She'd taken extra hours at work. He was freelancing. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of Maggie's favorite wine, watching the sun melt into the lake. The air smelled of cedar and damp earth, and the water glowed orange in the last light. For the first time in years, I felt no weight on my shoulders. No unspoken obligations, no quiet resentments. Just peace, and the knowledge that I had kept my promise to Maggie. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't confused. I was simply a man who had taken back his life, and I intended to live every day of it.